The session is on traditional foods, and it's called Setting the Table, Creative Space for Food, Land, and Culture to Thrive. Fiona Devereaux has lived on Coast Salish territory for half of her life. She is a first-generation Canadian from Irish parents, and her passion for nutrition and food started at an early age. She trained in dietetics at the University of Saskatchewan and interned in the Regina Health Region from 1995 to 2000. The ocean and the coast called her back, and she started her career as a diabetes educator. In 2002, she got her dream job as the community nutritionist for Aboriginal Health with Vancouver Island Health Authority. During this time, she learned about the local culture and traditions and met many helpful and supportive people. Please join me in welcoming Fiona Devereaux.
Hi, thank you so much. It's a real honor to be here in Gathering Wisdom and also on the Tsleil-Waututh, the Burrard, and Tsleil-Waututh, the Musqueam, and the Squamish Nations for having me join them in their territory to share the amazing work that I have had the honor of collaborating with on Vancouver Island. So I really appreciate you all being with me today, and I'll get energy from all of your smiling faces back at me. So thank you. Haichka. All right. So this is a teaching, Setting the Table, that I received from the Sartlip Nation about 10 years ago. And this is an elder, Elmer Henry from Pockwichin, in the movement that we were doing in South Vancouver Island around setting the table. And he was smiling at me greatly as we set the table with crabs, some smoked fish, and I think we had some oysters that day. So hopefully we can have fun in the next 40 minutes. So I was going to just talk a little bit about where the work has been done, talk about food, my passion. I love to eat. I have had such an amazing ride working in communities and being able to taste so many delicious foods. I'm going to really talk about how to create a food movement and how to make the healthy choice the easy choice for communities and community members, and how to build healthy communities and some successful approaches. I see in the audience some key people that I've worked with over the last couple years, Matilda from the New Chalmouth area, Janine Gagné, Melody Charlie, who are all powerhouse people who do this work in their communities. So I'm going to be sharing some of their work with me as well today. So anyone here from Vancouver Island? Yay! Welcome. So good to have some friends here. So you can see the small box at the bottom of this slide. That is where I spend a bit of my time. That is where I work out of Victoria, and I provide service to the 9 nations in the community and the large urban population. But I have had the honor of traveling up and down the island. I've been to Kingcombe, Alert Bay, and I've been all up and down New Chalmouth territories as well, and into the central of the island. So I live in a really beautiful place and have had the honor of learning from the New Chalmouth people, the Coast Salish and the Kwakwaka'wakw. So as I'm speaking to many people that know how powerful and vast the feasting and food was historically, full of bounty. There's a lady there, and she's drying huckleberries, and you can just see the vast amount of huckleberries that she has been able to harvest and dry. There's some fish being smoked here at the 4th Annual Traditional Foods Conference. We were learning skills at that event. And then also the open water sea fishing of the Coast Salish people. This is down in the States, the lower picture. So we all know the vastness of the elders' knowledge, the healthness of the lifestyle of the past, and how the feasting table was bountiful and collaborative and very community focused. On the last table there are some digging sticks made from ironwood, which is ocean spray, which is a common wood that we use in the Saanich territory. Very, very hard wood and great tool. So I, of course, know I'm talking to people from all over British Columbia, and I know that I would have a lot to learn of different foods that you eat in your territories, but these are some of the foods that I have had the honor of learning how to gather, fish, hunt, and then also eat and prepare. So there's the foods from the sea and the foods from the land. One of the key teachings that I have learned over the years is how much knowledge exists in the community. As you build relationships and people feel more comfortable with you, they share their vast teachings. One of the great projects I've been able to work on are digital stories, and I wish I could share some more digital stories with you today. The one on the link here below is from Tahis up in Fort Rupert at the tip of the island, and it's an amazing story from youth that are talking about their land and the elder that shares many teachings about food. I don't think we have time to share it. Some of the stories are around 5 minutes long, but I have them here, and I have my email. If you want to ever connect at the end, please email me and I can send you these powerful stories. Basil Ambers is the elder that's in this teaching, and he talks about how First Nations communities don't think of the land as their own. They hold it in trust for their future generation. So it's really that difference in thinking from the world I grew up in around ownership compared to ensuring a healthy environment for all generations. So what is on today's table? I've been using this quote since I heard it about 10 years ago. If you lose your food, you lose part of your culture, and it has a devastating effect on your psyche. I had the honor for many years to travel into many homes in South Vancouver Island through a diabetes outreach program that we created. And I, keen little nutritionist, wanted to always talk about healthy eating or nutrition or activity and cooking. And many times community members talked about depression or trauma or struggling with relationships in the family. Not many times were they needing to talk about nutrition or activity. It was the other things that were affecting their lives. And through colonization and all the devastating tactics of the government, I saw the changes that not having access to land or their food created for community members. So there's the First Nations food and nutrition environmental study that happened a couple years ago. And I like to talk about it because I think it talks about some of the key things that we're seeing in community. What we know is that many traditional foods are eaten. The top ones are salmon, moose, elk, deer, and trout. The top 5 modern foods or market foods are soup, veggies, potatoes, fruit, or grains. The big concern is out of the 1,100 adults that were surveyed, many of the nations were not urban, they were more rural. But they had very huge concerns that their food would run out before the month. 36% said the food that they bought didn't last and there wasn't enough money to buy more. 12% cut their meal sizes or skipped meals. And 7% were hungry but did not eat because they couldn't afford. And we know that many moms and fathers skip meals to make sure their kids eat. So food security, not having enough access to food, culturally appropriate food, is a huge concern for First Nations communities on the island. The key in the last line is that 91% of them would love to eat more of their traditional foods. They did express some barriers. They had lack of equipment or transportation, lack of availability or access to land, lack of time, and then again the difficulty to access, and then government firearm regulations or DFO, all those kind of governmental policies. When I was one day just brainstorming the things that I've heard over the last 13 years, I do think that the impacts of colonization are very vast. Another thing is, how many of you spend so much time trying to find money? If I could just do the work without having to find money to do the work, we'd all have much more prosperous food programming. The lack of land and quality land to grow food or create orchards or revitalize the clam beds. Lack of food access or food skills. Poor access to any kind of food programming. A big, huge concern about worries of our salmon and contamination, poor transportation, hunger, and frustration. I have also put in a link here to an amazing story of a youth that we worked with, Keenan, and he summarizes the shift from colonization and the impact of food. So if you ever want that video again, I'm sorry there's no time to show it. It's a powerful story from a young 19-year-old from the Shuswap First Nation. So I always like to talk about this. Is the healthy choice the easy choice? What do you guys think? Nope. No, it isn't. So I always, at health fairs or events, I have a basket of fresh fruit or vegetables or berries and just have a sign saying the real fast food. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. So we kind of, a lot of times people think that the health crisis might be happening in certain populations, or I hear health people always say that Aboriginal people have huge diabetes rates. We're seeing a health crisis across the board. I think Art this morning, if anyone was in that presentation, talked about it really profoundly, that the generation that's 15 to 17 across the board is the first generation that might not outlive their parents. So very powerful. But why? Well, we really live in a really supersized world. In the last 20 years, things have dramatically changed. So my mom shops at Superstore for a dinner plate. About 10 years ago, she got this plate. And a normal dinner plate is 8 inches, and hers was 21 inches. And she's like, well, I don't eat more. And I'm like, Mom, you have a 20-inch plate. Of course, you're putting more food on it. So things have gotten bigger and bigger. The average cookie has gone from the size, about this size, around 55 calories, to 275 calories. You'd have to wash your car for an hour and 15 minutes to burn off that extra calories. French fries have gone from 210 calories to 610 calories. You'd have to walk for an hour and 10 minutes to burn off that difference. Bagels have gone from, you know, a mini bagel that you can buy, those little ones? That's actually the size that a bagel should be. So bagels have just ballooned. And you'd have to rake leaves for 50 minutes to burn off the calorie differences in those sizes. We all know the power of pop. Does anyone know how many packages of sugar are in a can of pop? 7, did someone say? Great. It's actually around 10. It depends on the can, but they're all around 10. Having just 1 can of pop a day increases your risk of developing diabetes by 60%. So it's a powerful indicator of food and health. So you would have to rake leaves for 35 minutes to burn off the difference in calories. And that's like, you know, the old 70s can or bottle of pop versus a 12-ounce bottle of pop. So it's not like the supersized. Anyone know how many packages of sugar are in a Slurpee, or a large big Slurpee, or a big gulp? Someone said 25? A little bit more. A little bit more. Ooh. How about 48? So for every ounce of Slurpee or pop that's in a big gulp, there's a package of sugar. So that's kind of a nice way to look at it. So powerful. If I was to add up, when I'm sitting with someone with diabetes, and add up all the sugar they get from healthy food like fruit and vegetables and quinoa or brown rice, or all the foods that end up breaking down to sugar, the goal for them would be no more than 30 to 35 packages if they're not that active per day. So if a child is having a Slurpee or a big gulp, they're getting 48 just from that food. So that just gives you a bit of an idea of how things, 20 years ago, if you got spaghetti, you'd get a cup of pasta, which is about the size of your fist, with 3 meatballs. Now you're getting 2 cups of pastas with 6 meatballs. So things just have gotten so big. This was actually one of my favorite things that I've read in the recent time. Julia Child's The Joy of Cooking, or a Danish group, took their famous cookbook. And so from 1909 to 2009, they kind of watched the recipe sizes, and the homemade meals have increased by 77% in those cookbooks. The portion sizes for meat increased 27%. Starch products can increase the serving size by 148. Vegetables increased by 37. Sauces increased by 47. So there is a positive, at least the vegetables increased. But again, our portion sizes have gotten just dramatically bigger. So the supermarket has become our shoreline. If you took like a little ticker tape and walked around to measure how much aisle space junk food or fruit and vegetables took, for every 3 meters of produce, there's 10 meters of junk food in the grocery store. Every hour that you watch TV, you're getting 7 fast food or junk food commercials. When you look at the grocery store, really the healthy choices are on the perimeter. When you have to take a food from Mother Earth and package it or put it in a can or in a bag, you usually have to add sugar, fat, and salt. So trying to encourage food that really is as close to its natural form as possible. Again, popular store-bought cookies used to yield around, if you were making them, would be around 60 cookies, and now they're yielding 100 cookies. I like this other quote. How would you feel, when you think about food and where it comes from, how would you feel after you'd flown on a plane or traveled to New Zealand? How do you feel after a long flight? I got here late last night after a long ferry trip, and I was like, phew. So it's important to think about the food, that it can be exhausted, dehydrated, dirty, and how food feels after being transported all around the world. So I don't know if anyone's heard of the author Michael Pollan. He's one of my favorite food authors who's really trying to just debunk all the confusing messages that make the healthy choice harder. And one thing he talks about is we talk about junk food, and he doesn't believe that it actually deserves food in the title, so he calls them edible food-like substances. In BC, at the nutrition survey that happened in around 2005, every time, 25% of what British Columbians put in their mouth comes from junk food. So a quarter of what we eat comes from food that doesn't have any nutrition. Hold on a sec. So the idea, I would do anything to lose 10 pounds but eat healthy or be active. So Art kind of talked a little bit about that today. So there's also this note to self: if I feel like crap, or if I eat like crap, I feel like crap. So eat less crap, which is carbonated sugary drinks, especially energy drinks, refined sugar, artificial foods, processed foods, and eat more food. So colorful food like vegetables and fruit, organic meats and fish and game. Eat more healthy fats, Art talked about that today, and drink water and fluids. And I agree with his idea that coffee's good. I drink a coffee a day. But I do like to always make sure you don't drink any more than 4 cups of caffeine a day. So another little fun way to look at it is the key to healthy eating. Avoid any foods that have a commercial on TV. Usually if it's a health food, they don't really have to sell it. But when they're trying to sell it to you, usually it doesn't have a strong nutrition background. Things like brain food versus stomach food. I use this slide a lot when I'm talking to kids. When I talk about eating Mr. Noodle or a package of Kraft Dinner, and I have these visuals where I kind of have the visual of what the Kraft Dinner is, and they lift the lid and it shows how it breaks down in their body, and it's kind of a fun way for kids to interact with their food choices. And I ask, how long do they feel full after eating Mr. Noodle? And they're like, oh, in an hour, I'm hungry again. And it's just, there's not any nutrition in that. There's definitely no protein to help the young ones. A lot of times we talk about food and forget that food's goal is to be medicine. And that we've kind of disconnected from that across society. We eat because, man, I gotta say, I love French fries. I'm Irish. The potato is a good thing. And when I eat French fries, I'm like, oh, those are so good. And it's the fat, right? And they market and change our taste buds to adore the salt, the fat. I was on BC Ferries last night, and I was sitting there, and I was trying not to eat French fries because like the waft from White Spot. So you sit on the ferry there, it's hard to not go, that smells good. So trying your best to remember that if you're feeling tired, you're feeling exhausted, how are you fueling your body? And how are you connecting to that reminder that the medicine and the nutrients are the medicine? So this was brought up through Art as well a little bit. This is the American Food Guide from 1917. And have companies, even dietitians, universities, complicated the message. Food, buy it with thought, cook it with care, use less wheat and meat, buy local foods, or harvest and connect to local foods that are free, serve just enough, and use what is left, and don't waste. And so just kind of remembering that we are targeted and marketed to every day to make it confusing, but when we really connect to our teachings and our families and our culture, we can remember these simple principles. This was made by the Squamish Nation down in the States, and it was just a nice visual of healthy portion size, healthy visuals of how we should put our plate down. So another teaching is don't eat anything your great-grandmother would not recognize as food. So that's moving on to the third video, I think, the Feasting for Change video. And I'll let you, give me a minute. This is a project that I've worked on I've had the honor of working on for the last 6 years. I want to just read a story. So myself and my nurse, as the Aboriginal health team, make their way to the door of one of the local elders who has diabetes. As he opens the door, he softly gestures to the team as he points past the field to the bay in front of his house. He says, "You see this? When I was growing up, this was my grocery store." They pause and listen as he passionately tells them of a time before diabetes, when diabetes prevention was woven into the fabric of everyday life. He talks about the challenges of maintaining this disease and how it continues to affect so many people in his community. So that day was very profound for me in my early learning about seafood and the contamination worries and the loss of access. You could see all the crab boats out in front of this bay, but many of the community members didn't have crab boats, and they were commercial companies taking a lot of the food away from the community members. So I decided to, with a group of people, hand deliver invites to some local elders, and we brought everyone together in Souk, and we'll share kind of the start of this movement. If you can play the story.
My name is Angel Henry, and I am proud to share with you a story that is close to my heart. It is about a group of people who have made a dream a reality by choosing to feast for change. The journey starts in South Vancouver Island in March 2007 with some of the members of the Feasting for Change working group. This is me and my 3 boys, Perry, Marcus, and Andre, at the Sayout Feast last summer. I am from the Paquachin First Nation, and I am proud that I learned everything I know about food from my mom, Joan Henry, whose food teachings were passed down to her from the many women in our family. I have been part of the Feasting for Change group for the past 1.5 years and have loved learning more about my food culture. Harvesting, preparing, cooking, serving, and eating my traditional foods has always been important to me, but with this project I have had the privilege of gaining more knowledge and skills about the old way, so I can continue sharing the traditional ways with the next generation. The Souk Hall was packed with families, and you could feel the excitement that feasting together inspires. Elders and young ones alike shared their stories about the old ways and encouraged the feasting to continue. Ideas bubbled about what it would take to share the traditional ways by using knowledge and skills that already exist in the community. So we set a path of working with each community's planning committee to create feasting events that highlight the stories, passion, skills, and knowledge in each community, while also assessing what their hopes and dreams were around food. The events continued along the path of over 18 months. We had the honor of helping to host 14 events in 9 communities. Pit cooks, harvesting days, plant identification walks, a large urban feast, and so much more. At each of these events, sharing and celebrating traditional foods as a community was the focus, but over time we learned that this was not the only thing we were celebrating. At many gatherings, community members said this was the first time they had seen a pit cook or tasted food in the ground. The first time they had tried salmonberry shoots or soapberries, or the first time they had walked in the woods to harvest sahal or fern. Many commented on their first time trying certain foods they had learned about from their parents, grandparents, or great-grandparents. In one of the communities, the children taught us how to harvest, prepare, and eat rock stickers, goose-like barnacles, mussels, sea eggs, and urchins. For many of us, it was the first time we tasted these foods. The energy and spirit at these events are powerful. There is always a true sense of community and coming together. So many times we heard that it was so nice to come together, to gather together and share food when it is not a funeral. So much about skunk cabbage. They are harvested in the springtime and then are used to wrap the fish in the pit. They are so useful they can be used as a dinner plate. We were also taught that we could use skunk cabbage for a shoe. How creative the old ways was. What I have learned from my elders is that everything has a life. Be thankful for what you have and only take what you need. Always keep your heart and mind open to the teachings you are receiving. We are hoping to share this story with others so more First Nation communities can continue to receive the teachings while feasting for change.
Thanks. Sorry, time is so tight. So that is this amazing project that I had the honor of working with over the last 5 years. We traveled up to Alert Bay, into Sanawas, in Nanoose, and then all over the place multiple times in South Vancouver Island. We did around 41 events, reaching over 5,000 people. And we created some stuff. We've been having fun. The first couple years, some people were like, well, how did you organize these events? So we created a knowledge basket, which is really just a DVD that tells this story, it has this story, and then just a slideshow of people actively out on the land harvesting and learning. And then just another disc that has tools and resources to help people bring people together. I remember one time we did an event and I forgot to talk to Chief and Council. So we made a planning checklist after that because that was a bit of an oops. We have a step-by-step how to do a pit cook following the teachings from the Pacheedaht First Nations. And what we found is that once people saw that, they could remember different ways that they had cooked in the earth. And we'd adapt it each time we went into a community. There's also a list of all the traditional medicine books and food books that we've found over the last years, and you can always email me and I can send you those. Just fun ways, games. I was going to do a game with you, and then I realized this is a bit of a big group. So fun games that you can kind of learn the assets that exist in your community and how much knowledge you have around in your nation. We created plant cards. The great part of each feast is we'd go on a nature walk, and it would be led by a community member, or if there wasn't a community member in that community, we'd bring someone in. And we created this deck of cards. I have a sample of them here today. They're plant knowledge cards, and there's 68 different local plants. And on the back it gives teachings, harvesting times, uses, and different ways to do it. So we created this as a project to kind of keep the feasting happening. So we're using it as kind of a social enterprise. We use the money then to keep the feasts happening. They're $35. If you're interested, I can give you the contact information on how to get them. We just also really with the plant cards, we wanted the youth to have something that they could refer back to when they're on the walks or when they got home if they wanted to learn more. One time 10 minutes, oh God, I'm in trouble. We had the slideshow was just happening at feasts, and one of the elders said to me, please make a book. Summarize the teachings from this 5 years. So we created, again, a book that summarizes the recipes, some of the knowledge, some of the rites that we learned and were shared with us through those events. I gotta hurry. Also, Feasting for Change kind of was a lot of work, and we were kind of seeing communities take it on themselves, but what we saw is this amazing island-wide movement, and the Wathlok and other communities were starting to do the feasts, and we created a traditional foods network on the island. You can hear our story at this YouTube or connect with me for our website. It's www.indigenousfoodsvi.ca. We have had traditional foods conferences on the island. We just hosted our 6th. Was anyone able to join us at the, oh, Georgia was there. We hosted it in Cowichan. Each year we move it around the island to kind of bring the energy from different territories and to highlight the knowledge. We've been all over the island except the tip, but we're hoping to maybe go to Fort Rupert and Guasala and Aquata next year. I did an amazing project called the Youth Digital Harvest, where we brought youth and elders together to the most beautiful place, Tofino, BC, where we learned and shared and gave the youth digital cameras, and then they were encouraged to go home and just take pictures and create a story of their liking. We first year created 23 stories, and then we created more. This is the YouTube that talks about how we did it, but then there's these amazing youth stories, and Keenan's earlier and the elders earlier were both from that project. And the key is sharing through the generations. This is my favorite photo with all the people from Pockwitchin hiding behind and the young one learning and seeing a pit cook opened for the first time. So how do we set the table for tomorrow? I really wanted to focus a lot of today, which is so funny, on how as health leaders, chiefs, health directors, how can we set a healthy table for tomorrow? So I really think it's important to connect to that teaching that children only grow up once. They have the first 18 months to make sure they get the best iron stores possible. Then they have 5 years to kind of really focus on that iron, but it is essential. Brain development, mental or like slow brain growth and development can happen without good iron stores. Kids only have 18 years to lay down their calcium stores. So how do we do that? So just thinking about that opportunity, like when we have young people, let's feed them well. The kids, their stomach is the size of their little fist. If they're eating, drinking sugary drinks, are they going to eat the food that is their medicine? How do we reconnect? How do we shift away? How do we create healthy environments, healthy tables? So I'm going to go through some of this. So take care of your body or your community. It's the only place that you have to live in. In every community, there's work to be done. In every nation, there is wounds to be healed. In every heart, there's the power to do so. I'm going to skip that. How do we create healthy environments? I remember one of the communities in my nations was had a brand new building. They were going to do landscaping, and I kind of tried to call everybody and say, hey, can we plant berry bushes and fruit trees and then have an edible landscape for that community so that it's not just a place where, and we could then fence it to make sure that some of the animals don't come in. Many times communities don't have access to a boat to get the food for their elders or their community meals or community events. So how do we create edible environments? Do you want to play this quick one here? So this is from my lovely friend Melody Charlie. Nature is our original PlayStation. So let's just watch this quick video.
Xbox. Circle for Target. McDonald's sign. Flowers.
I do not know what kind they're, but I know they're plants.
Some kind of weed.
Probably during the day I send about 300, 400, 500 text messages.
My main goal after school, like get my homework done so I can play games.
When I play video games, I'm like in my own little world.
A television, you know, it shouldn't mean that much to you if you miss it, or you shouldn't be upset and frustrated.
Being like connected with nature to the point where you feel tied to it in a way doesn't seem essential.
The landscape of childhood has changed.
This is a very large experiment.
We're hardwired to need nature. We don't do so well when we don't have that kind of experience.
It's fun, if not more fun than using computers, just because it's something I've never experienced before, really.
I don't really miss my phone. It's kind of fun being out here. And like video games, you can't sleep outside.
What are you missing when you are looking at screens?
We are destroying our ability to reproduce ourselves as a healthy culture.
We have a chance to change the course of where we're headed right now.
We need to put them in a situation in which they can have a sense of wonder.
What they will not value, they will not protect. And what they will not protect, they will lose.
Mel, for sharing that with us. Disconnect to reconnect, and that's what I really feel I saw happen in glimpses in Feasting for Change or the Traditional Foods Network. But we were doing lots of communities. We weren't able to target and focus on one nation. And I wish over time that I could to see the dramatic effect that we could do if we could shift how we're connected. And I know that I'm over-connected sometimes. We talked about that last night with Facebook. So we need more of us to disconnect to reconnect to the outdoors. What children do not value, they will not protect. And what they do not protect, they will lose. So I was also watching Robert Bateman, that famous painter, one day, and he said that he was quoting a Cowichan elder. What we've been saying is, what kind of world are we leaving for our children? We need to start asking, what kind of children are we leaving for our world? So, I'm going the wrong way, team. Over the years, my first meal in community was 2 bottles of pop, some ground meat with some white flour, slushy kind of in together. And that community I was in on Monday, we had a beautiful table set. And I also, for the first time, saw the community drum and sing. And, to see that shift and that change and that resilience is powerful. But communities are nutritionally at risk. They do not get enough fruits and vegetables due to poverty and a lot of food skills lacking, and they don't get enough protein. So as health leaders, when you have time to set that table, set it the foods that your communities need, not the ones they maybe want. I know one community love to have KFC all the time. I'm like, your communities might get that, but what do they need? It takes 20 times for a young person or an adult to see a new food before they'll eat it. So when we have the opportunity, let's do our best to set the table. So this is when we have the chance, let food be the medicine. And bring your community together around food that fills their cup. And Mel was sharing last night that she's done this legacy tournament. At the first year, everyone was laughing and being like, what's hummus? And this year, they're trying quinoa. They're very open and trying new things, and that's from her leadership. I do think creating, a lot of times I'm asked to come into community and be like, can you tell the cooks to cook better? Can you come in and help with new recipes? Can you come in and do this? And I will do anything as long as it's collaborative, fun, maybe hands-on. But I'm not going to go in and tell your cooks how to cook. They've been cooking for years. They have tons of knowledge. Let's do it together, but it has to come from maybe a policy of health. How can you create a healthy nutrition and lifestyle policy for your communities that your staff have to abide by? When I go to youth events and the youth or leaders are buying food that the youth do not need or get a ton of at home, use that opportunity and those dollars to fuel those youth and expose them to new foods. I have never had a negative experience cooking with youth. They're keen, they're excited, they'll try anything. And so using those opportunities to fuel their tongues and their taste buds to try new things. Oh, I keep going the wrong way. Here is one way that we were trying to do a food and nutrition policy. We just put a dinner plate up and started listing things that the community thought might be a good idea to serve. And we just listed. And then we did a little list because sometimes people need to know what maybe not to put on their plates and help guide them. But you can do this in any way, and really including your knowledgeable chefs and cooks on how to kind of do this. Also, just, that same idea again, community nutrition policy. One community I work in, they don't have salt shakers at any of the meals. They created this universal seasoning, and it's just a healthy salt shaker. And so it's always on the table, and people can just try it. There's no you have to do this. It's just there for you to be exposed to. And I think that that's the one thing about nutrition. I hate when it's negative. Man, don't we all love eating? Let's have fun with it and set the table with food that kind of engages people. This were some all stuff about the movement to really focus on schools, because kids are learning in schools, they're connected in schools, and how can we do our best to create healthy school environments. So again, if you want to look at this stuff, I can send it to you. Again, feasting creates opportunity for people to eat together. We know that eating together is one of the main predictors of health, so there's some more information on there. Children that eat together do better in school. They have better social and language skills. They have better weights. They're more connected. They have better self-esteem. They smoke and drink less. They're less bullied. They have less depression, and they feel more secure. Sometimes when people hear, and busy families hear eating together, they get overwhelmed. We just mean even breakfast, even a snack. If you can find the time to bring everyone to a table of some kind and turn off the technology and just connect. My good friend Matilda Atleo created these conversation cards because we know that sometimes it can be hard to start that conversation, but the power of eating together, as a nutritionist, I would say the power of nutrition is so great. What we know, who cares what you eat at this point? Just connect. So set that table with whatever you can at the moment and work to making it healthier over time, but the key is eating together, having those opportunities. So they created these amazing culture cards that you can just, conversation cards that you can have on the table, and the kids can pick one. There's some examples of the questions. Or if you could have been an inventor of anything, what would it have been? Could you name some fruits that you have to peel before you eat them? What games do you like to play outside? So just ways to kind of engage young people and connect as a family. And the key is turning off the technology and not stressing about what you're eating, just eat together. So we have, as a group of people on the island, have had some great successes. We are currently doing some traditional food and plants classes where we're doing train the trainers and getting just people to kind of reconnect the knowledge that they have. I have many visuals on healthy food and not so healthy food and how they break down to the body, and I just usually line them up on a table. They're in these dinner plate formats, and let community kind of learn about how their food affects their body. Melody, do you want to chat about some of the, quickly? Come on, my love. She is a powerhouse in New Chalmouth on health promotion.
Hi, my name is Melody Charlie. I'm from the Ahousaht and Ukiulet First Nation. I'm also here photographing the event today, but I work quite closely with Fiona and Matilda and a bunch of other amazing people. Something that we started on Vancouver Island on the West Coast was a 90-day no pop challenge. So we've done that for the last couple of years, and normally it's been pretty small, like 30 people or whatever. And then last Christmas, it just went off. There was like 250 people from all over who just were so interested in making this change. So now it's going to become an annual event because January 1st, December, January, people are thinking about making healthier changes and that. So starting a 90-day no pop challenge, if you can do that in your community, and have the support system, I think most of you have access, to nurses or nutritionists or whatever, is a great challenge. Then it's a whole group of people doing it together and supporting each other. Food skills for families, I don't know if Fiona had a chance to talk about that. Food skills for families is what we call healthy cooking class. So it's a 6-week class that's once a week for 3 hours every week, and it's normally funded through the Canadian Diabetes Association. So we have those running all throughout our communities. So again, that's food skills for families through the Canadian Diabetes Association. It's a free healthy cooking class that is available for communities. But I think that if you were to do one thing, I think it's a great challenge to do the 90-day no pop challenge. Everyone can do that, and it all starts with ourselves as leaders. Thank you.
Thanks, Mel. She's also starting log into life, or she can't decide whether to call it tech off, which I think is quite great. So those are just some examples. So I always think it's important, no matter how slow you go, you're still lapping the people on the couch. So it's always about just starting where you can and in your community to make the change that might be needed. I did, on my slide, put a whole bunch of resources if you're wanting to connect to traditional food projects, and then also some healthy food links. And then I just wanted to say thank you for your time. So haichka, klako, and gegla kesla for your time. And I really hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And sorry I rushed and went over. And Matilda has conversation cards for everybody.